All right, Ryan, awesome. Let's get into it. There's a few things I'm curious about with what you're building. Looks like you're touching potentially different countries. You're in an industry in the healthcare space. It's pretty important. Helping people navigate something that is really some people are not cut out for navigating at a time of need. So, love for you to just introduce yourself, share a little bit about what you're doing, and then let's get into it.
Sure. My name's Ryan Hawley. I serve as the CEO of Odin Industries. We have very divergent business interests, and I sort of oversee the group of operations. So the largest company is involved in Defense Base Act nurse case management, which is any contractors working ancillary to the military in some capacity. Could be food service, could be translators, security guards. Anyone that's not actually enlisted is protected under changing of the Federal Longshore Act, using very similar language, but trying to make the Longshore Act fit for foreign nationals working for a U.S. conglomerate. And it acts as almost a federal workers' comp program for foreign nationals. So we work with almost all of the major insurers that the employers use, coordinate their medical care, gathering medical records, providing field agents and locations all over the world, and then getting medical legal opinions that are used in the adjudication process. Probably 99% of these cases are in some process of litigation. So things like independent medical examinations or vocational assessments, peer reviews that become evidence within those arguments or at those trials if it does go that far. June of last year, we purchased a veteran-focused medical practice that does Nexus and DBQ letters for veterans that are applying for benefits. So kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. On the Odin side, we're employer focused. On the Shield of Odin side, we're directly working with the veterans and helping them navigate the VA. And then sort of the third completely unrelated business is we buy and flip foreclosed properties.
Okay. So, how does someone come across your services? Like, if we could almost go through from the beginning, once they realize they have an issue, how would they find you?
So on the veteran side, our marketing coordinator does a lot of social media posts. The main fishing ground, I guess, is Facebook. That's the age group that we're working with. They seem to live and die on Facebook as their platform of choice. And with that, you get Instagram and some of the other profiles that Meta owns. Other social media things like TikTok or whatever, it's just not our core audience. We've done some money into Google AdWords. We've had some success with that. But Google still is, I guess, the primary search engine. Where I would like to focus next is AI recognition, because people are asking ChatGPT or Clyde or whatever for suggestions, and that's slowly but surely sort of replacing the search engine capability. So on that side, it's more direct-to-consumer marketing. On the Odin Industries side, we work with almost every major insurer that's in the Defense Base Act space. So it's more about building relationships with the adjusters that are managing the actual cases, or the lawyers from the various law firms that are litigating. Those are sort of the two parties that will allocate who gets the work. That once you get on the panel for the various insurers, some of the major players are Gallagher Bassett or ESIS, Broadspire, things of that nature. Once you get on the panel, there's no guarantee of work. It's kind of at the adjuster level of they decide who's allocated the work, and that's a lot of shaking hands and kissing babies and taking people out to dinner and fostering those relationships where they would consider you over a competitor.
Mm-hmm. What were the two terms? One was Shield. Is that the first that you were explaining? The Odin.
Shield of Odin is the veterans
Shield
focused business. That's okay. The name. When we purchased it, it was an entity called the Dock on Wheels. we wanted to kind of align it with the rest of the company and the Norse mythology, and it's been a name that it helps protect veterans. It seems to resonate with them. We've got a kind of Thorish looking Viking on the shield as the logo, and it fits the aesthetic of the rest of the brands.
And what was the second one? You said, so one is Shield of Odin, and then the second one was called the Defense one?
Well, the Defense Base Act? The Defense Base Act is a federal legislation. The Odin Industries is the company
Odin Industries. Okay.
Yeah, Odin Industries is the company that plays in that realm or works within in that realm. And then the entity that all of the LLCs sit under, we call the Valhalla Group. So.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned AI visibility, showing up in AI search. So on the one side of things, people are talking on Facebook, they're sort of self-selecting in the sense they're talking maybe about an injury or they're talking about something that's going on. Is that how they're sort of, your team from a marketing standpoint is then finding these people to help and serve?
A lot of the veteran-based business becomes word of mouth. So the direct-to-consumer, certainly we get a return on ad spend for our direct marketing campaign, but a lot of the things with the veterans is doing a good job to help them navigate the VA, to give them strong medical opinions that are based in medical literature and proven theories, and understanding the various litigation that has gone on with the VA or the various rule changes with the VA to help them come to a favorable outcome. That our job is to help veterans to put on that uniform to serve their country and help them navigate a purposefully difficult system that is difficult for the average person to navigate, and it's difficult for a reason. That's a strategy to mitigate claims exposure against the VA. They make the process hard. They make the adjudication process hard, and the VA does offer free services to help navigate it. And you get 20 minutes at a very large company that's under $1 billion contract to make your case, and there's not that personal touch. And it's more of an assembly line than it is a white glove service. So we're competing against entities that provide the service for free. Where we differentiate ourselves is we'll spend the time to get to know the ins and outs of the veteran service, what their injuries are in detail, and we work with absolutely amazing medical team that's able to provide medical documentation that aligns with what the VA needs in order to make an informed decision on whether this veteran needs benefits or not. So we fill a certain niche, and we're not for everybody. There's lots of people that use the free services and go from there. But for those that want a little extra care and a lot more attention to detail on their claims in the sort of assembly line model, that's the niche that we fill.
And am I right to understand that you came through this, you have a nursing background, is that right?
Yes, when I came out of university, I went directly into ER. I believe at the hospital that I worked at, I was the first nurse that had gone directly from university into the emergency room. Throughout my bedside career, I was always attached to the emergent some capacity, whether it be full-time or part-time or casual. Then a few years into my career, I started doing international air ambulance. So I've been to 143 countries. I spent most of my 20s and early 30s crammed in the back of a Lear 35, flying all over the world, bringing sick people home. So I got to sort of two-bit brownie tourism a lot of the world. We would only be in places for a day or two. So I couldn't see everything. I couldn't fully explore, but I could pick a landmark that I wanted to see or an attraction that I wanted to see and get these sort of little snippets of different cultures in different parts of the world it was a pretty cool job when you're in your 20s and 30s. You know, I got little ones running around now and different responsibilities, but when you're young and fearless and looking for adventure, it was a pretty cool gig.
Hmm. It's interesting that you have that lens of seeing that pain so far from home, and then seeing that return, seeing you've physically seen that process. You're not just coming at this from an insurance company, dealing with paperwork and then seeing, something. You're actually, you know, in a way, like wheels on the ground, boots on the ground, like you were there to see these patients, probably hear some of those, gather some of that story in a way that is very real and tangible.
Absolutely, and I was the employee with the particular air ambulance that I worked with that never said no. So I was in and out of Iraq several times during active conflict in a non-military Lear 35 that we would be picking up in Baghdad to transport contractors out. The military takes care of their own with military air, but if you're not enlisted, it falls on the insurer to coordinate and falls on a nurse like me that's willing to say, yes, I understand there's an active conflict going on, but somebody needs help, and yes, I'll go in and get it. So, it gave me insights into most of the different cultures in the world. It gave me a perspective that no matter what your religion, race, creed, that all across the world we're a lot more alike than we are different.
Hmm.
And I think travel's the cure for racism or xenophobia. That I think the more you see of the world, you better understand that we're all people, and it just gives you a very different perspective than staying within a bubble within your own country.
Hmm. Yeah, we've worked with and do work with a couple kind of brands, for-profit, nonprofits in the space, and have disaster response is one of them. Like after Hurricane Melissa hit Jamaica last year, actually was there. We were first flight in, and got to go there and go to the west side of the island, and to bring things in, and that was really interesting. And specifically with veterans coming out of the States, and a lot of them behind these organizations too, specifically where they're ex-military, retired special forces and whatnot, and seeing these guys being willing to go into some of these spots, whereas a lot of people are just standing back, just glued to the news, just mentally not even able to get past whatever's coming at them from the screen. So
when I was still in Canada, I served as an incident commander for the EMAT team, which is a civilian medical team that was modeled after the DART model. So we trained a lot with the Canadian military, and it started as a droplet precaution traveling ICU in response to SARS. So before COVID, Toronto was hit by a mini pandemic of what's called SARS, and it was mostly quelled within the Metro Toronto area, which is I think the third largest city in North America now, or fourth. I know it surpassed Chicago in population. I think New York and LA are still bigger than it, but it was within a metro area, a lot of hospitals, a lot of infrastructure. So the initial team was conceptualized to help communities if it had gone outside of the Metro Toronto area, if it had gone to like a Bancroft or something of that nature. And it wasn't utilized quite a bit, so they started training us in mass casualty triage and disaster response. So we responded to some of the huge forest fires that were impacting native reserves. I acted as the incident commander for, I think, the greatest population migration in Canada at the time. I think there was 12 different tribes that were impacted, and they were shipped all over the province. So on the one hand, you had coordination to fight the fires and deal with the issue, and then you had 7 or 8 cities where you had 500 to 600 people at each site that would need food coordinated, that would need medical care coordinated, that some of them were coming into from dry reserves into hotel facilities that had a bar, and mitigating some of the challenges that came along with that, and having appropriate security measures in place, finding activities for the kids to do that had been displaced. And I acted as the incident commander for, I want to say, 4 weeks on that particular deployment before I handed off. We assisted with the G7 and G20 in Toronto. And to this day, I've left Canada. I'm no longer a member of the team. But to this day, they're sort of the pointy end of the spear for any sort of natural disaster that's impacting Ontario. So.
It's so important. I remember there was a few different places I got to go, and I was amazed at when you actually go through some of these disasters, and see the sheer scale of it. Like in Western North Carolina, after Helene came through, and actually going through some of that and seeing these massive mud balls that even the bulldozers are getting, their equipment was breaking. I traveled along with just a welder who had a welder set up, and he would go he was fixing these excavators that have cadaver dogs going around, and he's fixing this. And just like until you see it up close and see the sheer volume of this, but to see people that would go directly into it and be willing to help, you don't realize how important it is. But I completely agree with what you had mentioned about seeing humanity caring, like neighbors caring for each other, neighbors from other countries. So, very cool.
Asheville was a good picture of the American spirit that a lot of people jumped in to help, and I'm not sure that the government did a particularly good job of helping them, but the community itself came together to help each other out, which was a very unexpected and very catastrophic outcome. So, Western North Carolina is not a place that you anticipate would have that big of a fallout from a hurricane. I'm Eastern North Carolina. That kind of comes with the territory. If you're going to live on the coast, you're at risk for being hit by a hurricane. I was in South Florida prior and dealt with a number of hurricanes, and now we're in Eastern North Carolina. At some point, one's going to blow along the Outer Banks and come along to us, but the west side of the state is not a place you would expect that sort of catastrophic outcome. So,
very true. Well, Ryan, what is who specifically, if they could hear this, who would you say should raise their hand, should get in touch? Is this a veteran who, or not necessarily a veteran, but is this someone who's worked adjacent to, the military community and has really felt they're unrepresented, they don't have the representation they need before their insurance? Who is it that you would sort of suggest we get in touch?
On the Odin Industry side, it would be any insurer, law firm that is working directly with foreign nationals in some capacity. That our primary work is Defense Base Act based, but we're increasingly getting into the foreign voluntary space. Organizations that may not be working in combat zones but have employees that are traveling all over the world to conduct business. They need assistance with arranging physio or arranging nursing in Spain or London or Egypt or wherever their employees are. And if there's multinationals that have employees that are traveling all over the world, we would love to have a conversation. And then any veteran that's coming out and getting ready to navigate that process of deciding whether they qualify for benefits or not, either myself or the nurses that work for me are happy to have a conversation and see how we can help facilitate that process.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you very much for your time today and hearing about some of this. I know really important work that's being done. I'm going to stop the recording.